Hey, this is Regina White Favors with Homeless Recovery Tips, and the topic is the job is not a protest opportunity. When you are initially coming out of homelessness or you are leaving a state of, say, losing, when and you get a job, the job is not the opportunity for you to now protest all the different things that you think should be done with the job, meaning that you don't come on the job. You don't come on onto the job and say, okay, you don't like your schedule, you don't like your pay, you think it should be better. You should let me call a meeting, threaten to quit, do anything that will jeopardize your financial stability. The job is not a protest opportunity. I've always made this as a I don't know, I guess a professional mantra that you don't go onto a job and walk off a job when things are not going your way. For instance, there has been with the George Floyd situation, there were a lot of protests on jobs, right? And there were people taking knees, and there were people walking off jobs. Well, you don't protest on someone else's dime. That is another company. If you feel that um, seriously about a situation, then you leave the job, create your own organization, and you can protest all you want. But when you are first coming out of homelessness, the goal is to keep your head down. That's not you necessarily swallowing your pride and taking anything because um, taking anything how someone taking mistreatment. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to make the priority to find and keep and sustain a job. Because if you can find, keep, and sustain a job, it will help you to find, keep, and sustain an apartment. If you're jumping from job to job, um, especially when you are just coming out of homelessness or just coming out of prison, just coming out of jail, it's going to make it very difficult for you to create a record of success in an area. So a record of success could be you stayed on a job for 2 years, you had to live with your parents, you stayed on a job for 2 years, but you built up a savings, and you also have maybe a recommendation in your parent for an apartment, and that's a record of success. Or if you can qualify for yourself for an apartment, you stay in that apartment 2 to 5 years. And then later, if you want to move on to bigger and better things, then you have a record of success. Same thing with a job. If you don't particularly like the job that you're on, it isn't suitable for you, then you stay on it 2 to 5 years so that you can build up a record of success and also build up a recommendation from your supervisor and your manager. If you are moving from job, the only way that you can really get away with moving from job to job is if you work for a temporary staffing agency where they send you out on different assignments, and you can sort of get away with that. But then you would need to stay with that temporary staffing agency for at least 2 years so that you can build a record of success, and so that you can also build opportunities for that job or the staffing agency to give you a recommendation for another job. So the job is not a protest opportunity in the sense that you have to set the right focus. You can't go on to the job and create opportunities for you to quit that job or be fired or be laid off or do something, meaning that if you know your schedule is 8 o'clock a.m. and it's 8 to 5, then you don't walk into the building at 8 o'clock. You need to be there at least 30 minutes ahead, right, to make sure that you can clock in. So that means you are leaving your house at least 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, right, depending upon whether you drive a car, ride the bus, or the distance. And so you are making sure that You get to the job on time. That's going to create the rhythm. That's going to create a routine. That's going to create predictability. You can depend on stability. And so you do that. So then also when you know your lunch breaks are at 12 noon, you don't uh, miss your lunch break so that you can leave early, especially without permission. Also, you don't create situations where you are disagreeable with a supervisor or a manager so much to the point that you are provoking the situation, provoking the argument, provoking anxiety on the inside of you, provoking anger between you and a supervisor or manager. That is considered you sort of protesting the situation. You don't like things the way they are. What that really means is you wish you had done better in your 20s so that you can be a lot better where you are in your 40s and 50s and 60s. And you're really mad at yourself. You're using the supervisor, the manager, or any other type of situation as a projection opportunity. You're projecting the anger that you feel at yourself onto that other person. That person barely knows you. They don't know, that person doesn't know you enough to trigger you. Even if you feel that the person is triggering you, but that's an internal situation that external people do not know about. I remember this one guy that I used to know. He was the type of person, he would go hard trying to find a job, and he would have really good jobs. He would have the types of jobs I could never get. And I have an educational background. I have degrees, but I could never get those types of jobs. But he would get them. But then within 2 months of him being on the job, sometimes lesser than that, 2 months of him being on the job, he has created a situation where there is tension, where there is conflict, where there is provoking, where there's little mini arguments. Um, then he has to visit with human resources and write a letter to them and have a conversation about why he feels the supervisor is doing him wrong, and it was just a number of things that he would do, and then that would go on for a while, and then somehow he lost the job. And what I think with that situation is that he is considered a loser, and I don't mean that as a negative mark on his record. What I'm suggesting is that he gets something just to lose it. He has no intent to keep it, and it could be it is definitely performative, right? And it's usually in front of someone. So my ex would do that. He was trying to get back with his ex, the ex who didn't want him, and so to prove his worth to her, he would go get really one of those really, really big jobs, a big, big job or whatever. But then when she didn't come around and didn't want him anymore or wasn't interested in any type of job, maybe because the pay wasn't enough or whatever the reason is, he would find ways to quit and lose the job. And once I recognized the pattern, I began my own process of exiting that relationship, right? Because him losing jobs is making us homeless. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be physical and literal homelessness. It can be emotional, psychological, mental homelessness, meaning that there's so much anxiety that you're not stable emotionally. You're not stable mentally. You're not stable psychologically. You don't know when the next shoe is going to drop. When is he going to do the next thing? When is she going to do the next thing? When are you going to do the next thing? And you can't live like that. You can't sleep at night. You can't work on the job that you do have um, effectively. And so, when you are first coming out of homelessness, that is not the goal. The goal is not to make trouble. The goal is not to tell the boss off. The goal is not to set everybody straight, to participate in protests and walking off the job because of some current hot button political, legal, social issue. Your job is to hold your head down, keep your head down, clock in, clock out, make the money, stack, prepare to exit homelessness for good, get your own apartment, stay in that apartment, go ahead and decorate that apartment, make it your own, and pursue stability. And then you set a time schedule for that. Maybe between the first 2 years, you set a certain goal, and then the next 2 years, you set a certain goal, another goal, and then the next 1 to 2 years, you set the next goal, and that's your 5 year plan. And so that's something that you want to do. You don't want to look at the job as a way for you to challenge anything. You're not in a position to challenge anything. You are only in a position to plan your exit out of homelessness and sustain that exit out of homelessness by keeping a place, keeping a job, paying for yourself because you are 100% responsible as an adult. So this is homeless recovery tips. The job is not a protest opportunity.